Last week's federal budget saw a range of planned cuts to the arts community, and unfortunately game developers could be one of the hardest hit.
Goose looks at how the abolishment of the Australian Interactive Games Fund is likely to affect local games development.
Here in Australia, we love making games almost as much as we love playing them. So back in 2013, the government set up a fund to help us do just that.
Australia's always had a really good heritage in creativity in games, and I think the goal of the fund was to stimulate that.
And the idea was that there was money for project funding and enterprise funding, so the idea was really to build up existing studios to be sustainable.
Suddenly there were a lot more game artists and development opportunities started popping up everywhere, and they were all startups.
I think without the funding we would have been making the same game, but it would have taken 3-4 years. By the time we'd finished that game, it would have kind of almost been obsolete. So that funding kind of allowed us, to really focus. We definitely wouldn't be in the same place we were in right now.
Towncraft started toward the end of 2011. For us to get it out on the iPad took 2 years. And after we had the grant to get the game from iPad to iPhone and Mac, it took 6 months.
So, as you can imagine, last week's announcement to cut the Australian Interactive Games Fund came as a shock to many in the industry.
When I heard the funding was cut, I would have thought the industry had an opportunity to kind of fight for the fund, and it was a fair fight. But when I actually found out no one had been consulted in the industry at all, I almost felt like it was a mistake. They just saw games and then just thought, oh, we'll cut it there.
I think it's not wise of them to maybe cut this so quickly, and that's probably my biggest gripe personally with it, is just the lack of time they gave it to look at results.
The structure was really good. It was what the industry wanted, and it wasn't even a large amount of money. So the money we're talking about is $10 million.
That's where I think if the government had consulted with the industry, they probably would have seen where it's more than just games is a very powerful word. People just think it's one thing. There's a whole industry behind it, and I think that we haven't had the chance to prove it.
But is it even fair to assume that the government should be helping to fund the gaming industry in the first place?
It is the government's responsibility to run these programs, because what it means is you've got a diverse economy and you've got a diverse culture. We can't have a culture which is just built around finance and mining. That is an incredibly boring culture.
I don't think that a lot of companies wanted the government to fund them forever. They just needed a boost.
Look, I'm always very pro a media sector that is self-sustaining and profitable in its own right. It's the only way that we can keep competitive internationally as well as locally. I think what the fund did was act as a catalyst for new businesses and new enterprises and new products. And that is always important. Ultimately, we have to be self-sustaining.
Most indie game success stories have nothing to do with government grants whatsoever. They've got to do with making an amazing game that the world wants and needs.
Unfortunately, Federal Arts Minister George Brandis declined to respond to us about this issue. But regardless of why this cut was made, if it's not opposed or completely overturned, there'll no doubt be a whole range of short and long-term effects on the industry.
If you're a small indie team and you're trying to expand a bit, it's going to be a little bit of a hit for those guys, because it was a great opportunity that was letting them move forward, and they might have to reel their plans back a bit now for a while and find other opportunities and stuff. For everyone who's big or everyone who's smaller than that, it's not going to change anything at all.
I think the effect will be we'll slip back into where we were before, so a lot of people focusing on contract work while they're making ends meet. So we'll kind of get there eventually, but just not as quickly as we would have with the money.
I think a lot of people are going to suffer from it. I don't really know what the future's going to hold anymore, so I think I'm going to have to figure out some different options.
The games industry is not going to die, I hope, as a result of this. And I think if we can think more commercially around the way that we develop our games, then that's got to be a good thing.